The message came on a Tuesday morning. Jack Bennett sat in the quiet control room of NASA's Deep Space Communications Center, sipping his third cup of coffee. The night shift had been uneventful, just the usual data collection from the Mars colonies and the mining operations near Jupiter. His eyes were heavy when the alert sounded. At first, he thought it was a system error. The signal strength was unlike anything their receivers had ever detected. It bypassed all encryption protocols and appeared simultaneously on every screen in the facility. "What the hell?" Jack muttered, dropping his coffee mug. It shattered on the floor, but he didn't notice. The symbols on his screen shifted, rearranged, and then formed into English words as if the sender had instantly decoded their language. "Prepare for integration into the Varnian Confederation. Resistance is inadvisable. Send your leaders to the following coordinates." Jack hit the emergency protocol button under his desk. Within 5 minutes, the facility was locked down. Within 30, the first government officials arrived. By noon, the president had been notified. 3 days later, the United Nations Security Council gathered in an emergency session. Representatives from every major nation sat in tense silence as satellite images appeared on the main display. 5 massive ships had entered the solar system, positioning themselves just beyond the orbit of Neptune. "They've made no aggressive moves," said Defense Secretary Linda Carpenter. "But they haven't responded to any of our attempts at communication since the initial message." The Russian representative leaned forward. "How do we know this isn't some elaborate hoax?" Jack Bennett, now wearing a wrinkled suit instead of his usual NASA uniform, stepped up to the podium. "The technology required to send that signal is beyond anything we possess. It penetrated our most secure systems simultaneously across the globe. And those ships," he pointed to the display, "they appeared without warning, no approach trajectory. They simply weren't there, and then they were." The room fell silent again. The Chinese representative was the first to speak. "Perhaps we should comply. Send diplomats to these coordinates. Open a dialogue." Several others nodded in agreement. The British representative raised his hand. "If they wanted to destroy us, they could have done so already. This may be a genuine invitation." "It's not an invitation." The voice came from the back of the room. Admiral Samantha Ortiz walked slowly toward the front, her decorated uniform standing out among the civilian clothes. She wasn't scheduled to speak, but no one tried to stop her. "With all due respect to this council, you're missing what's happening here." She nodded to her aide, who connected a device to the main display. New images appeared, enhanced versions of the alien ships. "Our newest long-range sensors captured this data. They're scanning us. Every satellite, every power station, every military installation. They're mapping our defenses." She pressed a button and a new image appeared. It showed an intercepted communication between the alien vessels. The symbols were similar to what Jack had seen. "Our linguistics team has been working around the clock. We've partially translated their communications." She took a deep breath. "This isn't first contact. It's a conquest with paperwork." The room erupted in voices. The Secretary General banged his gavel for order. "Admiral Ortiz, are you suggesting we should refuse their request?" "I'm suggesting we need to understand what we're dealing with," she replied. "The Varnian Confederation has done this before. We found references to them in the signal patterns. They identify developing civilizations, offer integration, and then, one way or another, those civilizations cease to exist as independent entities." Jack Bennett stepped forward again. "She's right. We've detected signals from at least 3 star systems that suddenly went silent after similar contact patterns." The Secretary General looked grim. "What options do we have? Our most advanced weapons would be useless against beings who can travel between stars." Admiral Ortiz exchanged glances with the Defense Secretary, who gave a slight nod. "There's something you need to know," Ortiz said. "Something very few people on Earth are aware of." The security in the room increased. All electronic devices were collected. Recording systems were shut down. 50 years ago, something crashed in the Arctic ice. It wasn't from Earth. Ortiz let the words sink in. A small vessel badly damaged. Its pilot was dead, but the ship's systems were partially intact. We've been studying it in secret, sharing the research among the major powers. The French representative stood up, angry. This was kept from the United Nations? By unanimous agreement of the Security Council permanent members. The Defense Secretary answered. The technology was too dangerous to become public before we understood it. Admiral Ortiz continued. We've reverse-engineered some of its systems. Not everything. We're still decades from understanding it all. But enough to build one ship, one prototype that uses principles we've learned. She brought up a new image. A sleek vessel unlike any Earthcraft they had seen before. The Earth defense ship Reckoning. It's been in orbit behind the moon running stealth tests. President Garrett, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. You're suggesting we send this untested ship instead of diplomats? Start a war we cannot win? I'm suggesting we show them we're not as helpless as they think, Ortiz replied. The Reckoning has technology they won't expect from us. It might be enough to make them reconsider their approach. Jack Bennett looked at the image of the ship with awe. He had heard rumors about the Arctic discovery but never imagined anything like this. The debate lasted for hours. Some nations wanted to comply with the alien demand, others supported Admiral Ortiz's plan. In the end, the decision came down to the evidence. The Varnians had done this before, and those who cooperated didn't seem to fare well. 3 days later, Captain Alan Hayes stood on the bridge of the EDS Reckoning. His crew of 20 was the best Earth had to offer, pilots, engineers, and scientists who had trained in secret for years for a mission they never thought would come. Final system check complete, reported Lieutenant Olivia Martinez from the YAR tactical station. All systems nominal. Hayes looked at the main screen, which showed Earth growing smaller behind them. Communications? Officer Peter Kim nodded. Link to Earth Command is stable. We're clear to proceed. Hayes took a deep breath. No human had ever traveled this far from Earth. No human had ever faced an alien species in potential combat. They were making history with every second, and the fate of their planet might depend on what happened next. Set course for the Varnian coordinates, Hayes ordered. Let's introduce ourselves. As the Reckoning accelerated, its experimental drive system engaging, Hayes felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Earth hadn't sent diplomats. They had sent a message in the form of a ship, a message that humanity would not surrender without showing what they were capable of. The Reckoning disappeared into the blackness of space, heading toward humanity's first interstellar confrontation. The journey to the edge of the solar system took less time than anyone expected. The Reckoning's experimental drive system, based on the recovered alien technology, moved the ship through space in ways that defied conventional physics. What should have taken months was accomplished in days. Captain Hayes stood on the bridge watching as the 5 Varnian ships grew larger on the main screen. They were massive vessels, each one easily 20 times the size of the Reckoning. Their hulls were dark gray with strange blue lights pulsing along their sides. There was something unsettling about their design. Too angular, too precise, as if they had been built by machines rather than living beings. They've detected us, Lieutenant Martinez said from the tactical station. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panel. Their scanners are active. They're trying to get a reading on our systems. Hayes nodded. Let them look. Are our countermeasures working? Chief Engineer Greg Powell checked his readings and smiled. Perfectly, Captain. The absorption hull is functioning at optimal levels. Their scans are being fed exactly what we want them to see. A moderately advanced vessel with conventional propulsion and minimal weapons. They have no idea what we're really capable of. The truth was that the Reckoning represented the greatest technological achievement in human history. Its hull contained materials that absorbed scanner waves and could be programmed to return false readings. Its propulsion system operated on principles that Earth scientists were only beginning to understand. And its weapons? Weapon status? Hayes asked. All systems green, Martinez replied. Energy disruptors charged and ready. Pulse cannons on standby. Shield generators at full capacity. Hayes took a deep breath. Open a channel to Earth Command. The face of Admiral Ortiz appeared on a side screen. Report, Captain. We've reached E. The coordinates, Admiral. Varnian vessels in sight. They're scanning us but don't appear to be taking any aggressive action yet. Ortiz nodded. Remember your orders, Captain. This is a show of strength, not a provocation. Make it clear that Earth is not defenseless but avoid conflict if possible. Understood, Admiral. Hayes out. He turned to Communications Officer Kim. Now open a channel to the Varnian vessels. Kim worked his controls. Channel open, sir. Hayes straightened his uniform and looked directly at the main screen. This is Captain Alan Hayes of the Earth Defense Ship Reckoning, representing the United Nations of Earth. We have received your message and have come to discuss your proposal of integration. There was a long pause. The bridge crew waited in tense silence. Finally, the screen shifted to show an alien figure. It was humanoid but clearly not human. Its skin was pale blue with faint scale-like patterns. Its eyes were large and entirely black without visible pupils. It had no hair and its mouth seemed too wide for its face. I am Ambassador Kilzoth of the Varnian Confederation, the alien said. Its voice had an odd metallic quality, suggesting it was being processed through some kind of translation system. Where are your diplomats? We expected a formal delegation. Hayes kept his expression neutral. I am authorized to speak on behalf of Earth. Our leaders felt that a direct meeting would be more productive. The alien's black eyes seemed to narrow slightly. Unusual. Most species send their highest authorities to integration ceremonies. Earth does things differently, Hayes replied. Before we proceed, we would like clarification on what integration into your confederation entails. Ambassador Kilzoth made a gesture that might have been dismissive. Standard terms. Your planet will receive protection and access to limited technologies. In exchange, you will provide resources and acknowledge Varnian authority in all interstellar matters. Your military capabilities will be placed under Confederation oversight. Your cultural practices will be preserved as long as they don't conflict with Confederation values. Hayes exchanged glances with his crew. This confirmed everything Admiral Ortiz had suspected. It wasn't an alliance, it was a surrender agreement. I see, Hayes said carefully. And if Earth chooses not to integrate? The ambassador's expression didn't change, but the tone of its voice cooled noticeably. That would be unwise. The benefits of Confederation membership far outweigh the alternative. Which is? Forced compliance. Kilzoth said these words simply as if commenting on the weather. But that rarely becomes necessary. Most species recognize the futility of resistance. Hayes nodded slowly. I understand. Please allow me to confer with my superiors about your terms. The screen went black as Hayes cut the transmission. The bridge was silent for a moment. Well, said Lieutenant Martinez, at least they're honest about their intentions. Hayes turned to Officer Kim. Send the recording to Earth Command immediately, then give me a secure channel to Admiral Ortiz. Within minutes, Ortiz's face appeared on the screen again. She looked grim after viewing the exchange. It's as we feared, Captain. They're not here for diplomacy. Hayes nodded. Orders, Admiral. Ortiz conferred with someone off-screen, then turned, back to Hayes. The Security Council has reached a decision. Plan Revelation is authorized. Hayes felt a chill run down his spine. Plan Revelation was the most aggressive of their contingency plans. A direct demonstration of Earth's hidden capabilities. Understood, Admiral. Commencing Plan Revelation. After the transmission ended, Hayes turned to his crew. Battle stations. Prepare for defensive measures. Lieutenant Martinez, target their smallest vessel with Disruptor 1. Minimal setting. We want to disable, not destroy. Aye, Captain, Martinez replied, programming the targeting parameters. Officer Kim, reopen the channel to Ambassador Kilzoth. The alien's face appeared on screen again. Have you reached a decision already? That was remarkably efficient for a species at your stage of development. Hayes looked directly into those black eyes. We have indeed reached a decision, Ambassador. Earth respectfully declines integration into the Varnian Confederation. We prefer to maintain our independence." The alien made a sound that might have been a laugh. "That is not one of your options, Captain Hayes." "I believe it is," Hayes replied calmly. "Perhaps a demonstration is in order." Kilzoth conferred with someone off-screen, then nodded. "A demonstration? Yes, that might be educational for you." Without warning, one of the larger Varnian vessels fired an energy pulse toward the Reckoning. The bridge crew tensed, but Hayes remained calm. "Absorption. Shields holding," Powell reported from engineering. "Energy signature captured and analyzed. We can replicate it now." Hayes nodded to Martinez. "Execute." The Reckoning fired a precisely targeted pulse at the smallest Varnian vessel. Instead of an explosion or visible damage, the ship simply went dark, its blue lights fading. On the screen, Ambassador Kilzoth's composed demeanor cracked for the first time. "What have you done?" "A temporary systems disruption," Hayes explained. "Your vessel will regain power in approximately 6 hours. No permanent damage, no casualties. Just a demonstration that Earth is not as helpless as you presumed." The ambassador's black eyes widened. "Impossible. Your species does not possess such technology." Hayes allowed himself a small smile. "As I said, Ambassador, Earth does things differently. Now I suggest we discuss more equitable terms for our future relationship." Silence filled the Varnian command chamber. Ambassador Kilzoth stood frozen, staring at the screen where the human captain's face had been moments before. Around him, his advisors whispered urgently. The tactical officer was still trying to restore contact with the disabled ship. "Impossible," Kilzoth said again, though no one was listening to him now. "They are primitive. Their technology is basic. How could they do this?" Commander Vexus, the military leader of the flotilla, stepped forward. "The human vessel has capabilities we did not anticipate. Our scans showed nothing unusual, yet they were able to completely disable the Seeker with technology we have only seen in theoretical research." Kilzoth turned to his science advisor. "Explain this." The science advisor, a thin Varnian with paler skin than the others, looked uncomfortable. "There are possibilities. They could have salvaged technology from another species. Or perhaps... What?" Kilzoth demanded. "There was an incident 50 Earth years ago, a scout ship lost in this sector. It was deemed destroyed, but if they recovered it," Commander Vexus hissed, "that ship contained prototype technology, experimental systems that were never put into general use because they were too unstable." Kilzoth felt cold fear spreading through him. The High Council would not be pleased. A species that should have been simple to integrate now possessed technology that could threaten Varnian ships. And worse, he had misjudged the situation completely. "We must report this to the High Council," the science advisor said. "No," Kilzoth replied quickly. "Not yet. We must assess the full extent of their capabilities first. And we must not show weakness." On the bridge of the Reckoning, Captain Hayes and his crew watched the remaining Varnian ships carefully. The disabled vessel floated lifelessly, exactly as they had planned. "They've stopped scanning us," Martinez reported from Tactical. "I think we surprised them." Hayes nodded. "Good. Officer Kim, open a channel to Earth Command." Admiral Ortiz appeared on screen with several members of the Security Council visible behind her. "Report, Captain." "Plan revelation executed successfully," Hayes said. "We disabled one of their vessels with minimal energy output. No signs of life-threatening damage or casualties. The other ships have not taken aggressive action in response." Ortiz nodded, looking pleased. "Excellent work. What's your assessment of their reaction?" "Shock, primarily. They clearly didn't expect us to have this level of technology. I believe we've created an opportunity for actual negotiation, rather than dictated terms." The Admiral conferred briefly, with the Security Council members then turned back to Hayes. "Your new orders are to maintain position and open diplomatic channels. Make it clear that Earth is willing to discuss peaceful relations, but will not accept integration on their terms. The Council is preparing a formal response to the Confederation." "Understood, Admiral," Hayes replied. We'll hold position and await further instructions. After the transmission ended, Hayes turned to his crew. Stay alert. They may still react aggressively once they recover from the shock. 6 hours passed slowly. The crew of the Reckoning maintained battle readiness, monitoring the Varnian ships constantly. Finally, the disabled vessel showed signs of life as its systems gradually came back online. "They're powering up, Captain," Martinez reported. "Minimal. Energy signatures, they're being cautious." Hayes nodded. "As expected. Officer Kim, any communications?" "They've been communicating among themselves, but nothing directed at us yet," Kim replied. "Their encryption is complex, but I'm picking up fragments. They seem to be arguing about how to proceed." Another hour passed before the main screen lit up again with Ambassador Kilzoth's face. The Varnian looked different now, more restrained, more cautious. "Captain Hayes," Kilzoth said, his metallic voice carefully controlled. "Your demonstration was informative. The Varnian Confederation acknowledges that we may have misjudged Earth's technological development." Hayes kept his expression neutral. "I'm glad we were able to clarify the situation, Ambassador." "You mentioned more equitable terms," Kilzoth continued. "The Confederation is willing to discuss alternative arrangements for Earth's relationship with our alliance." Hayes nodded. "Earth is open to peaceful relations with the Varnian Confederation and other galactic civilizations. We're prepared to engage in cultural and scientific exchange on equal footing. However, we will maintain our independence and our right to self-defense." Kilzoth seemed to study Hayes for a long moment. "You have technology that should be beyond your capabilities. The ship you disabled contained equipment that could have conquered your entire planet, yet you used minimal force and caused no casualties." "That was our choice," Hayes replied. "Earth doesn't seek conflict. We want peaceful coexistence, but we won't surrender our sovereignty." "Interesting." Kilzoth made a gesture to someone off-screen. "We will need time to consult with the High Council about this development. This situation is unprecedented." "We understand," Hayes said. "We'll maintain our position and await your response." After the transmission ended, Chief Engineer Powell let out a long breath. "Do you think they'll really negotiate now?" Hayes shook his head. "I don't know. But at least we've given them reason to think twice before trying to conquer us." Back on Earth, Admiral Ortiz stood in the underground facility beneath the Rocky Mountains where Dr. Laura Reed and her team worked around the clock. The room was filled with screens displaying data from the alien ship recovered from the Arctic decades ago. "The Reckoning performed even better than we expected," Ortiz said, watching as Dr. Reed analyzed the latest transmission from the ship. Reed nodded, her eyes never leaving the screen. "The energy absorption rate was nearly perfect. But that's not the most interesting part." She pulled up a new display. "Look at this data from the disabled Varnian vessel. The Reckoning's sensors captured detailed readings of their systems during the power-down sequence." Ortiz leaned closer. "What am I looking at?" "Their technology," Reed replied. "It's similar to what we found in the Arctic ship, but there are differences, refinements, and..." She highlighted a section of the data. "This suggests they didn't develop this technology themselves. They acquired it from another species." "How can you tell?" "Inconsistencies in the design architecture. It's like seeing a car with parts from different manufacturers." Reed looked up at Ortiz for the first time. "And there's something else. The Arctic ship's database contained references to other species that resisted the Varnians. We've been trying to decode the star charts. I think we might be able to locate some of them." Ortiz's eyes widened. "You're suggesting we could find allies?" "Potentially," Reed said. "Species who have their own reasons to oppose Varnian expansion. If they see that we successfully stood up to a Varnian flotilla, it could change the whole dynamic." Ortiz finished. "We need to get this information to the Security Council immediately." As they hurried from the room, Reed glanced back at the main screen, which showed the Reckoning holding position near the edge of the solar system. What had started as a desperate gamble to protect Earth was becoming something much bigger. the first step toward a new future for humanity among the stars. And it had all begun because Earth didn't send diplomats, they sent a dangerous ship. The Varnian High Council chamber was silent as the recording ended. 12 senior members of the Confederation sat around the curved table, their black eyes fixed on the large screen that had just shown them Captain Hayes disabling one of their warships with ease. High Counselor Vex, the eldest and most powerful Varnian in the room, tapped his long fingers on the table surface. "This changes everything," he said finally. His voice was deeper than Ambassador Kilzoth's, with the weight of authority behind it. "A primitive species should not have this technology. The humans must have recovered the lost scout ship," said Counselor Mira, the head of scientific research. "It's the only explanation. That ship contained experimental systems that we abandoned because they were too difficult to control, and yet these humans have mastered them," Vex noted. "Ambassador Kilzoth, explain how your team failed to detect this level of advancement before initiating contact." Kilzoth, standing before the council rather than seated with them, tried to hide his nervousness. "Our standard observation protocols showed no evidence of advanced technology. Their space travel was limited to their own system. Their weapons were primitive. We had no reason to suspect." "You had no reason to be thorough," Vex interrupted. "You assumed they would be like all the others, easy to intimidate, quick to submit." He looked around at the other council members. "We have grown complacent, too used to easy victories." "What do you suggest, High Counselor?" asked the military representative. A battle-scarred Varnian named Drextot. Vex was quiet for a moment, considering. "This situation requires a more substantial response. Prepare the Dominance Fleet." Gasps came from several council members. The Dominance Fleet was the pride of the Varnian Confederation, 50 warships led by the dreadnought Inevitable Victory. It had only been deployed 3 times in Varnian history, each time against major threats to the Confederation. "Is that not excessive?" Kilzoth dared to ask. "The humans used minimal force. They expressed willingness to negotiate. Perhaps diplomacy." "The time for diplomacy has passed," Vex said firmly. "They have technology that threatens our supremacy. If word spreads that a primitive species successfully defied us..." He left the sentence unfinished, but everyone understood. The Confederation maintained control through fear as much as through actual force. If that fear disappeared, their entire empire might unravel. "The Dominance Fleet will depart immediately," Vex continued. "Earth will serve as an example to any who might consider resistance." Back on Earth, the Security Council had moved to a new location, a fortified command center beneath the Atlantic Ocean. The room was filled with screens showing the Reckoning still positioned near the Varnian ships, as well as displays of defense preparations around the planet. Admiral Ortiz stood before the council, her uniform now adorned with new medals awarded for the success of the first contact mission. "The Varnians have been quiet for 3 days," she reported. "Captain Hayes reports minimal communication between their vessels. They appear to be waiting for instructions from their leadership." President Garrett nodded. "And our preparations?" "Accelerating," Ortiz replied. "The technology from the Reckoning is being adapted for our orbital defense platforms. Dr. Reed's team has made a breakthrough in shield technology, and we've established communication with the Silurians." This last statement caused a stir among the council members. "You've contacted an alien species without authorization?" the Russian representative asked, alarmed. Dr. Laura Reed stepped forward. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes from days without proper sleep. "We didn't initiate contact," she explained. "They contacted us." She pressed a button on her tablet and a new image appeared on the main screen. It showed a strange vessel approaching the solar system from a direction opposite to the Varnian ships. The vessel had an organic appearance, almost like a massive sea creature swimming through space. "This arrived 12 hours ago," Reed continued. "It's a Silurian scout ship. According to the Arctic ship's database, the Silurians were one of the first species to be integrated into the Varnian Confederation. They've been under Varnian control for over 300 years. And they just happened to show up now?" the Chinese representative asked skeptically. Reed shook her head. Not by chance, they've been watching. When the Reckoning disabled the Varnian vessel, it sent a clear message across this sector of space. The Silurians saw it as an opportunity. She pressed another button, and the image changed to show an alien face. It was strikingly different from the Varnians, more insect-like, with compound eyes and mandibles that clicked as it spoke. "This is Admiral Kree of the Silurian Resistance," Reed translated as the alien spoke in a series of clicks and whistles. "They've been fighting the Varnians in secret for generations. They want to meet with us." President Garrett looked troubled. "This is moving very quickly. First contact with one alien species was challenging enough. Now we're considering an alliance with another we know nothing about." "We don't have much choice," Ortiz replied grimly. "Our intelligence suggests the Varnians won't negotiate now. They'll return with a larger force. We need allies." "The Silurians aren't the only ones," Reed added. "The Arctic ship's database mentioned 2 other species that have resisted Varnian control, the Novat and the Zentari. The Silurians believe they can help us contact them." The council chamber erupted in debate. Some representatives argued for caution, suggesting that Earth should focus on its own defenses rather than trusting unknown aliens. Others saw the potential benefits of galactic allies against the Varnian threat. While the debate continued on Earth, Captain Hayes received new orders aboard the Reckoning. His face was grim as he addressed his crew. "We're being recalled to Earth," he announced. "Our mission here is complete." "The Varnians are leaving?" Lieutenant Martinez asked hopefully. Hayes shook his head. "No, but our presence is needed elsewhere. The situation has evolved." As the Reckoning prepared to return home, Officer Kim looked up from his console with alarm. "Captain, I'm detecting a massive energy surge from the Varnian communication array. They're sending a long-range transmission." Hayes moved quickly to Kim's station. "Can you intercept it?" "Partially," Kim replied, his fingers moving rapidly across his controls. "It's heavily encrypted, but I'm getting fragments. They're reporting to their leadership, requesting something called the Dominance Fleet." His voice trailed off as he looked up at Hayes with concern. "How large is this fleet?" Hayes asked quietly. Kim swallowed hard. "From what I can decode, 50 ships minimum, including something called the Inevitable Victory." The bridge fell silent. They had successfully stood against 5 Varnian vessels. But 50, with their largest warship? "Set course for Earth, maximum speed," Hayes ordered. "And send this information to Admiral Ortiz immediately. We don't have much time." As the Reckoning turned away from the Varnian ships and accelerated toward Earth, Hayes stared at the main screen. The initial confrontation had been successful beyond their expectations, but it was only the beginning. The real test was yet to come. And somewhere in the darkness of space, other eyes were watching, species who had suffered under Varnian rule for generations, who now saw a glimmer of hope in the actions of a planet called Earth. A planet that didn't send diplomats when threatened, but instead sent a dangerous ship. 1 month passed quickly. Earth changed more in those 30 days than it had in the previous century. Nations that had fought each other for generations now worked together against a common threat. The technology from the Arctic ship was shared openly, and new defensive systems appeared in orbit around the planet. The Reckoning, once Earth's only advanced vessel, was now joined by 3 sister ships built using the same technology. In a large meeting room beneath the Rocky Mountains, Captain Hayes stood with Admiral Ortiz as they faced representatives from 3 alien species. The insect-like Silurians clicked their mandibles as they spoke. The Novat, with their silver skin and 4 arms, gestured constantly. The Zentari remained mostly still, their gaseous bodies contained in special environmental suits. "The Varnian Dominance Fleet will arrive within 2 days," Admiral Kree of the Silurians said, his words translated by a device Dr. Reed had developed. 50 ships, including the dreadnought Inevitable Victory. They have never been defeated. "There's always a first time," Hayes replied calmly. The Novat representative, Commander Liss, spread her 4 hands. "We have brought 6 warships. The Silurians have contributed 8. The Zentari have provided 5. Combined with your 4 vessels, we have 23 ships against their 50. 23 ships and Earth's orbital defenses, Ortiz added. Plus the element of surprise. They expect to find a single planet with one advanced ship. They don't know about our alliance. President Garrett entered the room, followed by Dr. Reed and several military officers. Everyone stood as the president took his place at the head of the table. The Security Council has approved the final defense plan, Garrett announced. Admiral Ortiz will coordinate Earth's defenses. Captain Hayes will command our joint fleet, alongside our alien allies. He looked around the room at the representatives of 4 different species. What we're attempting has never been done before. A multi-species alliance against the Varnian Confederation. It was impossible before, said the Zentari diplomat, her translated voice sounding musical through the device. No single species had the strength to stand against them. But together, with Earth's unique technology, we still face terrible odds, Commander Liss warned. But we face them together, Hayes said firmly, and that makes all the difference. 2 days later, alarms sounded throughout Earth's defense network as the Varnian dominance fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system. The massive ships emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, led by the inevitable Victory, a dreadnought 3 times the size of any other vessel in the fleet. On the bridge of the Reckoning, now designated as the flagship of the Allied forces, Captain Hayes watched as his tactical display showed the Varnian ships approaching. All Allied vessels report ready, Captain, Lieutenant Martinez said from her station. Earth's orbital platforms are powered and targeted. Hayes nodded. Communications, put me through to all ships. Officer Kim worked his controls. Channel, open, sir. Hayes took a deep breath. This is Captain Hayes to all Allied vessels. We stand together today against an enemy that has dominated this sector of space for centuries. They believe their victory is inevitable. Our job is to prove them wrong. He paused, looking around at his crew. Humans who had trained for space travel but never expected to find themselves in a battle for their planet's survival. Each of our species has suffered under Varnian aggression. Today we show them that the era of their unchallenged dominance is over. Hold formation, follow your assigned targets, and remember, we're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for freedom across the stars. As he finished speaking, the tactical display updated. The Varnian fleet had detected them and was adjusting course. They've seen us, Martinez reported. They're scanning our ships. Their formation is changing. They appear confused by the presence of multiple species vessels. Good, Hayes said. Let's add to their confusion. Signal Earth Command. Activate the orbital platforms. Around Earth, dozens of defense platforms that had been hidden behind the moon or disguised as satellites suddenly powered up. Their energy signatures became visible to the approaching Varnian fleet. On the bridge of the inevitable Victory, Fleet Commander Zaris stared at the tactical display with growing concern. What is this? The humans have allies. And these defense platforms, their energy signatures match our own technology. His tactical officer looked equally confused. Sir, we're detecting Silurian ships, and Novat, even Zentari, species that should be firmly under Confederation control. Impossible, Zaris muttered. The humans couldn't have organized this in a month. A communication officer turned from her station. Sir, we're being hailed by all 4 species simultaneously. Zaris hesitated, then nodded. On screen, the display lit up, split into 4 sections. Captain Hayes represented Earth. Admiral Kree represented the Silurians. Commander Liss spoke for the Novat. A Zentari diplomat completed the group. This is Admiral Kree of the Free Systems Alliance, the Silurian began. The Sol system is under our protection, as is any system that chooses independence from the Confederation. Leave now, or face combined resistance. Zaris struggled to maintain his composure. This is Fleet Commander Zaris of the Varnian Dominance Fleet. Your actions constitute treason against the Confederation. Stand down immediately or be destroyed. We expected that response, Hayes said calmly. Perhaps a demonstration like the one we gave Ambassador Kilzoth would be helpful. Before Zaris could reply, Multiple energy pulses shot out from the Allied fleet. Each pulse targeted a different Varnian ship, not damaging them but temporarily disrupting their systems. The affected ships drifted, their lights flickering. That was a warning. Hayes continued. Our next volley won't be so gentle. You're outnumbered, Commander Zaris. Outnumbered? Zaris almost laughed. We have 50 ships to your 23. I wasn't counting ships, Hayes replied. I was counting species willing to fight for their freedom, and that number grows every day. As if to emphasize his point, the tactical display updated again. From the direction opposite the Varnian fleet, 3 new ships appeared, vessels of a design Zaris had never seen before. The Taraxi have joined our alliance, Commander, Liss announced. They too have suffered under Varnian rule, and there are others waiting to see the outcome of this confrontation. Zaris looked at his tactical officer, who nodded grimly. The new ships had power signatures similar to the Earth vessels, capable of disabling Varnian technology. For the first time in his long career, Fleet Commander Zaris faced a decision he had never anticipated: whether to retreat. The Dominance fleet had never failed in its mission, but they had never faced a united front of multiple species with technology that could counter their own. You have 1 hour to withdraw from this system, Hayes said. After that, we will consider your presence an act of war. The communication ended. On the bridge of the reckoning, the crew waited tensely. Do you think they'll leave? Martinez asked quietly. Hayes shook his head. I don't know. The Varnians have never backed down before, but they've never faced a situation like this, either. 58 minutes later, the Varnian fleet began to move. Slowly at first, then with increasing speed, they turned away from Earth and accelerated out of the solar system. Cheers erupted across the Allied fleet. On Earth, people who had been watching the confrontation on news broadcasts celebrated in streets around the world. The Varnian Dominance fleet, the most feared military force in this part of the galaxy, had retreated without firing a shot. In the command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, President Garrett turned to Admiral Ortiz. Is it over? She shook her head. Not by a long shot. The Varnians won't accept this defeat. They'll return with an even larger force, but we've bought time and we've gained allies. On the main screen, they could see Captain Hayes standing on the bridge of the reckoning, surrounded by representatives from each of the allied species. When we sent the reckoning instead of diplomats, Ortiz said, we didn't just defend Earth. We sparked something that's been waiting to happen for centuries. The Varnians maintained control by keeping species isolated, afraid to resist alone. We've changed that equation. As the Allied ships formed a protective ring around Earth, Hayes looked out at the stars. What had begun as a desperate attempt to protect one planet had become something much greater, the beginning of a movement that could reshape this corner of the galaxy. And it all started because Earth didn't send diplomats. They sent a dangerous ship,